Okay. Oh, let me turn it around. Okay. Welcome in the room with a special agenda. Thank you all again for joining me tonight. I appreciate everybody that has taken time out of their very busy schedules, work, family time, entertainment, because that is a part of self care. Sometimes you get home from work and you need a break from the people that you work with or the environment. Sometimes it's the stress of doing a job that may be something that you love, but may be a lot. And the topic that we're going to be discussing today is for those people who do a lot for us and we do not show the appreciation that they deserve. Sometimes there are situations where you feel like the needs are not being met or they don't appreciate the privilege of doing the job that they have selected to do because it is a job that requires a special gift, and that is teaching. Most people that know me well know our journey of having special needs children and what that entails. And I, at the very beginning of all of that, was someone who did not recognize all that was being done in the way I could have done better. Sometimes we're not appreciative as we should be, and we don't show the gratitude that we should show. And those are actually two different things, and we don't recognize that. For me, I started out with being sad, as a lot of people are, because there is a process in which once you start to see what is what you had been covering your eyes and blocking your vision from, because it's painful to look at sometimes. Sometimes we look away from what we're dealing with. So we have unrealistic expectations of our situation and for those who are helping us. And that is for teachers. Um, Sometimes we have been known to, not just myself, but other parents who are dealing with it and being overwhelmed with what we are coming to know about what our journey will be. We will take out our frustrations, not in the way necessarily of being mean to the teachers or disrespectful, but in the way of not being easy to guide. Should you follow everything everyone says? No. You should absolutely understand what your circumstances are, what your child is going through, what your family is going through, what you know about them to be true, but you should not be dismissive. And sometimes that's something that we do. And sometimes it comes off where we have what we, in a communication issue where it is what we call a tone. Everyone usually understands what it means when you say a tone. Because when we are speaking with our children, there'll be times when they're communicating with us, and children that are on the spectrum don't recognize usually right away when they have a tone, meaning it sounds angry, it sounds disrespectful, it sounds possibly rude unintentionally. As parents and caregivers, when you have outside help, other caregivers, instructors, teachers, sometimes therapists or doctors, when you don't feel heard and understood, sometimes the way that we communicate that comes off as aggressive. And it's easy to do. It's something that we sometimes slide into as a pattern. If we're not careful, we'll do it to other family members and loved ones. You'll take it to work with you. You could be taking it out on your mate because they don't seem to understand what you've been going through. If it is taking care of those children all day or dealing with them when they've not been dealing with them in an effort to make things easier for them, sometimes we'll miss that. We will miss the signs that they are going out of their way. It just doesn't look like what we think it should look like. I'll let that resonate for a minute. When people help you, it may not always be in the manner in which you expect it to be, but that doesn't mean it's not help or that it's not beneficial. There will be times when things are beneficial and it looks differently, and sometimes it needs to be different. It needs to be different because of the fact that we don't always see things from the angle that they're looking at them. And when they're looking at it, and it is from the angle of someone who has to deal with them on a daily basis, also, and they're teaching them the way they've learned to. They don't always have all the training or all of the answers, but because they can't answer all of your questions, doesn't mean that all their answers that they do give are incorrect. When I found it's more effective when you have children that are on the spectrum, for me, I found it effective for watching the therapist also and learning my children that they respond better to encouragement than they do to, and it helps when you're redirecting them to encourage them than it does to constantly reprimand. Because there will be so many things that you're trying to guide them in the direction of to do properly that if you're constantly reprimanding them, it feels like you're standing on their neck. For my children, I found that it was effective too. As I watched, like for instance, they started out with teaching them to uh, pick up their things. One of the things they started out with was they started out with a song. It's something fun, it's something engaging. It doesn't make them feel like they're going to be punished or constantly corrected. The Bible points out that if if we were constantly corrected, who could stand? I found that many times when they start to have meltdowns, it is as a result of constantly being corrected. Do they need to be corrected? Yes. Is there a proper way to do it? Yes. Um, is there only one way to properly correct them? No. See, that's the miscommunication that we have sometimes. And I found that that was an issue with my family that was attempting to assist me. And we stopped the conversation too soon. I'll say, I stopped the conversation too soon because to them, it felt like I was telling them the way in which to correct them. And I only wanted it to be done that way. What I wanted or should have said was that it needed to be done in a manner in which they're receiving correction, where it that they do understand that that's not the proper way to do it, and they understand the correct way to do it without feeling that they're being attacked, because that's what they hear when they hear no. I used to think when I would hear the conversations that other parents would have, and they would say things like, um, you shouldn't say no to them. They're not telling you that you should say to them that there are no limitations, there are no boundaries. What they're saying is inform them of what they can do, what we should do, what we'll do instead of, what we can do in place of, what we'll do and then we'll do. Those conversations should also be had when we're having conversations with the instructors, possibly the principal, because there are going to be times when your children may have to, based on their behavior, their diagnosis, and different issues that will arise, that you can have those conversations about what can we do in the event of these particular things happening, and letting them know that you do appreciate them. And that's how the conversations need to start. Sometimes our conversations are too short. It is not intended that we make them feel like they're not the authority, but we also don't want to feel powerless. And I understand that. And sometimes in those that give and take conversation, when the conversation stops too soon, the things that should be said because we don't consider it, sometimes it's necessary to have a conversation with yourself and a prayer ahead of time so that you address with yourself what it is, PowerPoints that you want to discuss that doesn't seem as if, one, you don't appreciate them, two, you feel like they don't have your child's best interest, or that you feel they're ill prepared. Even if you feel more can be done, you want to make sure that you let them know that you still appreciate them and in what capacity that you feel that they can help, and then they will direct you to who can be of more assistance. I remember having a particular conversation with one of my son's second grade instructors years ago. And we were having a conversation about the things that I felt that needed to be done and what I wished could happen. But I didn't say it in that way. So I could tell that she felt as if I was being dismissive of what skills she brought. I understood that there needed to be more people, but I didn't ask more questions. I gave more answers to what I thought needed to be stated without feeling out what it is she wanted to say. So what ended up happening was we ended up in a tug of war. So very little was accomplished. And at one point she said to me that she said, well, maybe you could have you considered homeschooling him. In other words, since you don't think I'm qualified, maybe you could do this yourself. There are plenty of other programs. The conversation that it was intended to be had was what is available in conjunction with what you have going in the classroom that we could help to improve what's what's there so that it could be more effective. Because what was happening was he wasn't learning to read. Anybody that knows me well is when I was younger, I lived in the library. I loved it to the, to the fact that I would most of my entertainment was reading. So when I would get punished, my parents would take my library card. If my grades started to slide, other things would happen. They would take my library card from me because that was my form of entertaining. That was my happy place. So to have a child that was struggling in that area was very hard for me. It was very painful. And rather than taking the time to let the teacher know I appreciated all the efforts that she was going through, it became a place of me internalizing it and it becoming a part of, to them, it appeared to be my ego. And as a parent, many times we do internalize a lot of things that are happening or not happening from the perspective of what we see. And we go to the place where now we feel like we need to correct everyone without finding out how to get the proper help. Sometimes we are requesting more of a person without realizing they're already going out of their way. We don't know that we should adjust how we're saying what we need to say so that we're showing them that we do appreciate the effort and we do understand. Also, listening to the behavioral issues so that there could be more conversations had, so that you can help your child to improve what's going on with them, so that you can get um, other programs that they may know about. Sometimes there are things that we just don't know, and they will go over and beyond what their job requires of them to do, because outside of school, they don't have to go above what is required. They could do the minimum. And it is a gift and a privilege. Yes, at some point, many teachers who do get involved in the special needs program and start that process, eventually, a large percentage of them decide that it's a lot because it's a heavy weight. Um, and you have to have the gift of patience, tolerance, and a lot of love. Understanding that once you step into it, you won't always be able to change every situation in the way that you think that you could or would at the very beginning of it. Over time, journeys change because there'll be bends in the road, there may be some blockages, there may be a detour you may have to take because of it looking different once you start. The scenery starts to change, a lot of times out of necessity. So, as parents, in the process of teaching yourself, because if you don't take the time to teach yourself how to communicate with the different instructors and teachers and doctors, therapists that will be a part of your journey, there'll be a lot of missed opportunities. And you cannot teach your children what you don't have in your own personal repertoire. If this isn't something you know, you cannot teach your child a foreign language that you don't speak. You can get them a tutor, but you won't be effectively able to communicate with them yourself so that you all can engage and they can do well in learning that foreign language if you haven't taken the time to learn it yourself. I had a friend who got married and she moved to Germany. And I love that when she was dating and they had gotten engaged, that her mom took the time to learn German also. And I thought that was beautiful. And I thought, a what a wonderful relationship. Those are parenting and relationship goals. Because not only did her daughter learn it so that she communicate with her husband and his family, her mom learned it because she knew that this would be her daughter's family and i.e. her family as well. So she understood that it was crucial that they do this together because this would be a united thing and this would be a lifelong journey. In teaching your children gratitude and appreciation, it is indeed a language. And once you learn to show your children how to be appreciative and how to have gratitude, how to be thankful for what they do have, how to be thankful for the things that you do provide, how to be thankful for the people that surround them, they will learn more effectively. And it will be in their behavior pattern and their communication skills. So they won't be so off balance when it comes to communicating with their instructors. And if they are kind, because you can guide your children in a manner in which they are kind. If they are kind, it makes it easier for their instructors because they'll follow instructions better. And for me personally, teaching my children to listen is a part of the appreciation process. If you are appreciative, you will take the time to hear what the other person is saying. Non appreciation is the other person talking and you talking over them, waiting to respond, or not even allowing them to get out what they're trying to say, walking away. One of the signs of having Asperger's and autism is not having great eye contact, and they've been known quite frequently in the middle of your conversation to walk away. Once they're done saying what they have to say, they don't often stay to hear what you have to say. But in that process of doing that, they also will have issues with not paying attention, sorry, not paying attention to the instructor because they don't appreciate that it's the other person's turn to communicate. That was something that we went through for a while, and I did not realize that the problem was me. If your children sense that you don't appreciate the experience, sorry, with their instructor and who their instructor is and what they do bring to their educational journey, and you all haven't tried to have a positive experience, then their attitude will be a reflection of yours. And so when she was starting to have problems, it took me a while to realize they were sensing how I felt and they were acting out how I felt. They are very empathetic in the sense that they can sense how you feel even before you say anything. So that's something that I had to acknowledge. My husband and I say, okay, we need to make an attitude adjustment within ourselves. I have to have better body language and communication and let them know how much I do appreciate it because it's not hard to take the time to point out all the flaws that someone is doing for you without realizing that the reason they don't want to go over and above, the reason that they're not putting in more effort is because they don't feel you appreciate it anyway. You don't recognize the fact that they're doing so much. They're doing the best of their personal ability because even though they cannot always accommodate what you expect to happen, that doesn't mean that they're not attempting to do the best that they can do and that their best should not be appreciated. So for us, making those adjustments started to make all the difference. And as a parent who has had to deal with that for a while and understanding that those changes needed to have been made so that I could get help and so that they will seek help, it started to be a huge adjustment and surprise when I started to see my children start to ask for help properly and seek solutions versus being frustrated. Oftentimes, like for my son, our bigger issue was he would get overwhelmed and he had a lot of frustration. And as a result of his frustration, he wasn't moving forward and progressing the way that he could have had he taken the time to not be frustrated. But once they were sensing our frustration, even if I did not um, say anything negative, body language, tone made a difference in how he responded. And once he started to understand, I started to make adjustments in the way I communicated with him so that he didn't feel like I was bothered by the process of giving him help. He decided to seek more help, and to sometimes help, in many cases, is helping them help themselves, meaning allowing them to to seek out a solution without assistance. Because one thing that you want more than anything is for your children to be self-sufficient, particularly if they're on the spectrum, because you don't want them to constantly be dependent upon you. Because as time goes on, there are things that you want them to be able to do, you want them to be able to thrive, but you may not be able to do everything for them all the time. And you don't want them to expect other people to constantly do things for them either. It's necessary for them to seek help, but they need to be able to discern when it's not necessary to ask for help, and that their help needs to be their own, their self. That's the other thing. When being appreciative to instructors and teachers, part of the problem is, as parents, and I had to take personal ownership of this, and a part of my personal growth was accepting that some of the help that I was requesting was not anybody else's responsibility but my own. I was asking for more than was necessary for me to receive. I could have sought a solution without making it someone else's work. And I'll say work because there are so many things in life as a parent that you will have to do. It is work. And it doesn't mean you're lazy because you don't want to do it. It means you might be afraid. You might be afraid that you're going to fail. You might be afraid that it won't be the best that it could be. But in all honesty, they're our children, they're our gifts. Though they may have the gift of teaching, it is our gift also to guide. It is also our gift to do our, to take on that privilege and use it in the best way that we can to do the work that's necessary to help our kids. We cannot expect them to do more than we're doing. We can't. So, at that thought, that is the end for today. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us in the room with a special agenda. This is something that we're working on. American Sign Language. This is the dictionary. I have some CDs and other stuff at home I'm working on. Um, I've taken sign language in the past. We did it with Rayla was little. Some of it stuck, some of it didn't. She still remembers a lot of sign language. RJ was more verbal, so he did not need that. We just um, did not have to do that. So I didn't retain as much of it. But currently, as the location in which I do this show, as the Dallas Public Library in Georgia, we are trying to find a ASL um, person to do story time. Um, there is not in this county an ASL story time. And I always think about the children who are on the spectrum. They communicate better. It's so hard to have story time. For me, it was. For my kids, I did read to them, but we were wrestling to get them to sit still because they hear with their eyes. So that is why sign language is the way they generally communicate with children who are nonverbal or are limited verbally. Um, and I thought it would be great also for the children who are hearing impaired and would love, their parents would love to give them an opportunity to have a story time at the public library. So I'm really, my one of my goals and dreams is to do this. And anybody that is interested in joining me, so that we can get this show on the road and we can start a ASL story time for the kids, I would love it. I think there are lots of people, there's more people in our community that are hearing impaired. And then we realize, and I feel like everybody should be included. We should all have the same opportunities. The children that are do not have difficulty with hearing get a story time. And I feel like other children should have that gift too, because story time is a privilege. I remember having it when we were in elementary school. I remember going to the library. My sister and I would walk to the library, and we would do a puppet story time. And it would just be nice to have that go on here. So, anybody that's interested in doing that or know someone, please inbox me, shoot me a message, messenger me. Also, on October the 5th, we will be having Officer Weaver, Michael Weaver, come out to discuss something that a program that he had been doing. If you've been following me for any length of time, you know that he's an officer that's actually also a scientist and has a special needs son that is autistic, and he runs a program where he communicates with different ones and to children who may be at risk of being molested, teaching them how to protect themselves, what they're looking for. Well, this will be a show in which we will be discussing that. And also, we had a discussion not long ago where we were discussing helping your children who are on the spectrum not become predators. And this is what that show will be. Because there are so many signs that they miss: appropriate behavior, language, things that they do that other people will misunderstand. What are we looking for to make sure that they're not that? How do you know that they're not being groomed? How to help them not being groomed? Protect them from being groomed for someone who is attempting to do that. Um, there will be so much information. Please join us 5:30 October the 5th. Please be in the room with a special agenda. I promise you it'll be something that you will definitely be able to use, something that you will want to pass on as information. Something maybe you'll even be able to get some resources in the event something has happened and you don't know what direction to go. There'll be so many questions asked and answers given. And if you want to give any, if you have any questions that you won't ask, send them. We'll do our best to answer as many people as we can. We may even have physical guests. Um, join us. Have a wonderful night. Thanks again. Be kind to everyone that you can be kind to, even if you don't feel like they're being kind in return. Be loving. Try to be understanding because kindness is, in fact, a choice. Y'all have a great night. Love you guys. Thanks for joining.